Welcome to the F50 Woman Podcast, dedicated to sharing stories from a diverse community of women in order to provoke you into a passionate pursuit of life, build unshakable character, and achieve extraordinary things. Now, here is your host, Julia Jack.
Born a rebel, she experienced alienation early, but that never deterred her from her life's purpose. Her father dealt with his struggles very differently than her mother, and she learned from them both. As a result, she has grown into her own position on diversity and equity. And now, Sonia Lewis is calling for openness and reconciliation in the hope of creating a world where all its children can play on a leveled playing field. Whether this talk encourages you to be bolder or pushes your buttons, it's another boundary-breaking true story that we all need to hear from another bold and fearless F50 woman. Hey, thank you, F50 Women, for joining. We are here today with Sonia Lewis, and she is from Ascribe Educational Counseling and Edify Humanity, and she's got some power to give us today. I'm sure we're going to hear all about that, but thank you, Sonia, for being here.
Absolutely. I surely appreciate you for inviting me onto and welcoming me onto your platform and the F50 Women.
Yeah.
That's important.
Yes, absolutely. We are, because we are not done yet. Well, before we get rolling in, I want everybody to know that Sonia is unflinching and asking the tough questions and facing the uncomfortable truths and building equity-driven outcomes. I am excited about that because I believe that the hard truths and the hard conversations is what makes the best and biggest growth, whether it's in our personal lives or whether it's as a community and as a nation, as a world as a whole. So I'm excited to talk to you. She's
Absolutely.
She's a mother. She's a wife. She's an influencer, an entrepreneur, and all around unapologetic. Yet she is an authentic Black magical force to be reckoned with. And I love how they say that because that you exude that. And I think that's what we need in the world today. I really do.
Absolutely.
So please start by telling us who you were as a young woman, what you wanted to be. Just give us an idea of how all of this Sonia magic started at the beginning.
You know, it's so funny. I hear that question and I oftentimes marvel at the younger me because, as my mom would say, oh my gosh, she was such a rebel as a child. I consider myself an alien. I still do.
Okay.
Someone who just does not conform to the norms that are kind of handed over to us and just accepting of for the sake of accepting.
Yeah.
And so I grew up in a household that was kind of a weird dichotomy. My mom, I grew up in the Bay Area of California, and my mom dibbled and dabbled in what is now known as the Black Panther Party. Okay. Whereas my dad is a Vietnam veteran, and he was one of the first 5 Black officers hired with the Richmond Police Department. Wow. And so growing up with those two very opposing entities being front and center in my household, I never saw it. As a young girl, they tried to protect my sister and I from those images that can be misconstrued either way or the other. But I heard it. I heard about the conversations that had to do with these tough topics. As a 7-year-old child, I decided very young
7. Okay.
7. Yeah. That I wouldn't say the Pledge of Allegiance one day. I went to school. There's a lot of backstory to that. I went to school and I didn't stand and I wouldn't put my hand over my heart. And I was like, ain't no liberty and justice for people that look like us. Now I have to say that my mom intentionally chose schools for us to attend that were primarily white.
I was going to ask that. Yeah.
I was always I always felt different in those situations. And I wanted to assert who I was in that space. And so I said, I ain't saying this pledge. And I got in a lot of trouble behind it.
Oh, I bet. Yeah.
And I will tell you that still to this day, I lean on who 7-year-old Sonia is because she still reminds me to be courageous. She reminds me that my voice is important. She reminds me that it's important that we stand for other people. So that's
Yes.
just a little bit about who I am and kind of the perspective that built me.
That's right. Yeah, where it all came from. So, as a 7-year-old, as a young person, how did you not get crushed by the opposition to your opposition?
Yeah. The main opposition was my teacher.
Okay.
And because she alienated me from the rest of my class, it just fueled me to keep on going. It fueled me to
Okay.
be that thorn in her side. So
Yeah.
she removed me from the playground. She took away my lunches and my recess time. She made me do before and after school detention, things of that nature.
Okay.
And then she didn't tell anybody else, not my parents, not the principal. So it was like she completely alienated me from my whole school campus. And so because she did that, I felt like I had to keep her secret, like what was happening to me
Mm,
and how it was impacting me. But at
wow.
the same time, it also fortified this, like, I don't know, those are those kids that you be like, you want to say she bad, but she not bad. And it makes you, think and question and be like, why is she doing that?
Yeah.
All I really and truly wanted her to do was ask me why, right?
Okay.
And she didn't, because I knew that she didn't value my opinion, my
Yep.
voice, my being
Yeah.
whatsoever.
Yeah. She didn't really care about that. Yeah. Now that you're older, what do you think would have been different should she have asked you why?
Ooh, I know that there would have been a conversation.
Okay.
I know that because I was raised in a household where my parents stressed, like super uberly stressed,
Hmm.
being respectful to adults,
Yes.
that I would have listened, that
Okay.
I would have taken into consideration her perspective,
Yeah.
that I would have allowed her an opportunity to convince me why I should, one, put my hand over my heart and stand up and look at a piece of fabric
Yeah.
and utter these words. I would have listened.
Okay.
I know that that would have been a different outcome for me. From that day going forward, and I turned 50 last year, I have not,
Yay!
right? I have not said the Pledge of Allegiance. I have not stood for the Star Spangled Banner. And I think that I legitimately have a right to do so.
Right.
And I respect those who do.
Hmm.
I just want people to respect the reason why I don't.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, when my principal found out about this situation, she asked me why. And I said,
Wow.
I'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance when there is liberty and justice for all. And so I'm 50 now. That was 43 years ago. I still haven't seen it. And so I still don't stand.
Okay. Have you, or what has been the worst, hardest, most harsh pushback on that stand that you're taking?
Ooh, I think it's hardest when I'm in spaces that impact my children.
Okay.
We all as children try to conform and meet the expectations of those adults that we trust, right?
Yes.
And so oftentimes it's easy just to go along to get along.
Hmm.
My dad is an example of that. He was like, I don't know how to respond to this teacher who's doing this to my child and punishing her so harshly.
Yeah.
But I know that if I speak up, there might be some repercussions that will come my way.
Yeah.
And so my kids, they remind me that there are some battles that you don't have to choose so harshly. So the pushback is me sitting in a high school stadium watching my kid play football along with all the other parents and hearing the snide remarks from those parents who are like, who does she think she is for not standing?
Mm.
I'm a very vocal person in my community. I'm a community activist, and
Hmm.
I have been verbally attacked in the grocery store, like literally verbally attacked, and in front of my children. And
Yeah.
so those are the harsher moments. Though that's the pushback um, that I have to explain to my children.
Yeah.
Like, I'm okay with who I am.
Yeah.
You have to figure out who you're going to be,
Yeah.
and you can't feel shame because of who I am.
Okay.
Right? I don't want to ever transfer that level of shame onto them just because they're my children.
Yeah. Okay. Now, as we're talking about who you are, why don't you tell us about who you are? Tell us about your organization. Let us jump right over some of the stuff in the middle between who you were
Yeah.
and who you are. And let's understand who you are and what you do now.
Yeah. So I am a graduate of Spelman College with a degree in history and psychology.
Okay.
I then went on to San Francisco State University and earned a master's degree in education with an emphasis on curriculum writing and program development. Taught in the classroom for a little less than 20 years. And then I became a whistleblower. I discovered that my principal was stealing money from my program,
Uh-oh.
and he asked me to not come back to that school site. They couldn't fire me because I had tenure. Long story short, they had to pay me for several years because I refused to just take any assignment. It led to a little bit of depression and anxiety. But
Mm,
during that period, it was a test. I really and truly think that it was the biggest test that I ever underwent. And I had parents and students still calling me for assistance. And so I decided to take all of the things that they were asking me to do
mhm.
and start Ascribe Educational Consulting. It's been 13 years now. It was the best decision that I've ever made, because
Nice.
I don't do well with authority, right?
Yeah.
I think outside of the box
Yeah.
and I make a way out of no way. But I will also say that it was the biggest growth that I've had, to experience in life as well. I heard the naysayers, including family and loved ones, say, that's not a real job for the first few years. Like,
Oh,
go get a
man.
real job. Like, you have degrees and you should be doing X, Y, and Z. And it's like,
Yeah.
okay, I
Yeah.
hear you, but I'll never work for anyone else again. And
Right.
so I had to kind of juggle, am I being my full authentic self to my family and contributing, um, respectively to, am I living out my authentic self? Am I being true to myself? And so I've been doing educational consulting for a little over a decade. And now the bulk of my work is around equity and anti-racism work.
Okay.
And when I started it a decade ago, it was my attempt to marry educational inequity with social justice. And now I'm able to live this dream out. And like my hat says, equity is my love language. Really and truly, that's all I do and live and breathe every day.
Right. So you were doing equity and social justice before 2019, 2020.
Yeah,
Okay. I
yeah,
just wanted to put that out there that this was already your thing. You didn't just jump into it because it's a
absolutely.
wave. Right. Right. If the challenge at 7 and this challenge as you were an educator and that those things didn't come up, do you think that you would be who you are doing what you're doing now anyway?
Ooh, part of me says yes,
Yeah.
because I had parents who were very like, let's talk about this.
Okay.
Let's weigh this out. Let's understand why this is, right?
Right. Right.
So I probably would have been doing something along the line of equity.
Okay.
When I was younger, I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to cure sickle cell anemia. Really and truly, that was my dream as a kid. I had a
Okay.
cousin who had sickle cell anemia. I have the trait. Several of my family members have the trait, and the disease. And this one particular cousin, 2, 3 times a year, would be in the hospital in so much pain. And I would be like,
Mm,
I'm smart. I want to figure out the cure. I just don't want you to see you in pain anymore. And
right.
so it's for very personal reasons. But if you think about even that desire, me rationalizing wanting to cure sickle cell anemia, that's about equity, right? Because we think about diseases like cancer, diseases that don't impact the Black diaspora or Black women, right?
Yeah.
Um, those things get cures and those things have money that's being thrown at them. But a disease that's been around for forever, like sickle cell anemia, there's not huge push to try to find a cure. And
Right.
so to me, it's still a matter of equity.
Yeah.
It's just in a different field. Yeah.
Yeah. You don't hear about sickle cell. At least I don't hear about it very much. Did you ever have a feeling to just quit and stop? Has it ever felt like, oh my gosh, this is too much. I can't save the world. Nobody's listening.
You know what? It's so funny that you asked that, because when George Floyd happened and this wave that you speak of when it
Yeah.
comes to this work, it was very overwhelming. I was getting called. I was like, I don't have the capacity.
Okay.
And to my current clients, I was saying, I've been telling you guys this. I've been saying that you need to do X, Y, and Z, and you didn't
Yeah.
listen. Imagine the world had folks been listening a decade ago, or,
Yeah.
back in the 60s when the civil rights movement was taking place, back during the time of emancipation. Imagine the world if equity were really thought out, strategically planned, and that solutions were experienced then. And so now I've been able to take the past 2.5, 3 years and really dissect, can I stop this work now? And, at the top of 2021, I was telling myself, I'll never quit my job. I love this so much. But I was talking recently to my business mentor, and she and I were talking about, you might want to think about an exit plan. And I'm now thinking about what is legacy. So I'm looking at it from the perspective of legacy. Who can I pass this on to?
Okay.
So that the work continues, but at the same time, it frees me up to do some other things that I still dream about.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. And so what does equity mean to you?
So equity is meeting everyone's individual needs in a resource-rich country, because we have enough to provide for everyone's needs.
There's enough. Yeah.
There's enough.
With you. Yes.
And we've been sold a really hill of beans that we live in a deficit. Yeah. And I use this one analogy, this one example. In my hometown, the city of Oakland, where I'm from, there are enough abandoned homes to house all of the unhoused people in the city of Oakland. So there's no need to build more structures. That means that we have enough, right? Yeah. That means that the tax base in the city of Sacramento, where I live currently, the tax base is enough to fund the schools equitably across the board, and there not be failing schools in any urban city across this country, because we live in a resource-rich country. Yeah. And so that's what equity is to me. It's meeting the needs of those who are most vulnerable. And when you meet the needs of those who are most vulnerable, everybody wins.
Yes, I agree. That's why I've never really understood why. I always say these things with a little asterisk next to it.
Right.
But I don't understand why everybody's so opposed to it. Because if you help the little one over there, it's going to help the little one over there. Think
of it as a net, and you cast out that net. The one that you're trying to catch and save, catch, but you might help somebody else along the way.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that's proven in small ways all over the place that's the case. But I don't know why everybody's buying the bill of goods that there's just not enough for everybody. So what do you think is stopping us from embracing and accepting equity?
At the end of the day, I think it's a fear.
Okay.
Being afraid of the norm changing. Right. It's the fear, because we've all been conditioned that this is the American way. We've all been conditioned to believe that we can't, as one individual, change anything about the system. Yeah. And my argument is, collectively, if we use people power, their strength in numbers, we can tackle this beast. And in tackling the beast, it's one thing that really has to be addressed is recognizing that a reckoning needs to take place, that we need to have some reconciliation. We need to have some healing. We need to recognize that there were some atrocities that happened in this country. And how do we bring everyone along so that we can leverage the playing field? And then that will be as equity shows up. But yeah, it to me, it boils down to fear and folks not wanting to give up a little bit so that others can gain something.
Okay. And I'm just curious, how do you mentioned being in the grocery store and getting attacked in the grocery store. I imagine even when you try to talk to people who say they want this, it's still hard because they don't understand what they're wanting. It's going to be harder than they imagine. Yeah. How do you deal with people who attack you or who oppose you?
You know, I've never walked in a spirit of fear. I don't know. Okay. I don't know what that looks like. And when I really and truly tell people I feel like an alien, I don't know what fear is. So I would imagine, like the stories that I've heard of Harriet Tubman and Fannie Lou Hamer and the number of Black women that have come before us, right? Mm-hmm. And so in that moment, I have these out-of-body experiences. And I literally followed that man out the store and repeated the words that he said. I was like, you just called me this. Wow. And is that appropriate? And he and his wife ended up leaving the grocery store. And And I, maybe it was dangerous. My husband was like, you can't do that, because what if he would have turned around and done something? In my mind, I don't think of, the what if. I don't think from a perspective of fear.
Right.
And if there were an opportunity for me to think of, okay, so what if he had turned around and physically attacked me? I believe that there were enough witnesses around that hopefully someone would have come to my aid, right? That's the hope.
Yeah.
And that we're not out here floundering alone where no
Yes.
one would be of assistance.
Yeah.
And so that's what I lean on. I lean on righteousness. I lean on what's right.
Yeah.
And so I followed him through the store, and I shamed him enough that he left the store.
Yeah. People do that to make you afraid and cower, so you'll just shut up.
Right.
Does your husband support you in this? And did he know you to be this when he married you, or did it show up and he's like, wait a minute, what is this, Sonia? I don't want to do this.
Oh, that's funny. That is funny. So I think that he knew. I mean, at least I shared with him the things that I have been known to have done.
Okay.
When they started happening physically, he would be like, okay, we got to have a conversation. I also have to say that I'm one of the former chapter leads of Black Lives Matter Sacramento in my local area.
Wow. Okay.
And when things would be at the height of the movement, he would try to say things like, so let me add this caveat too. He's a press engineer, so he runs the newspaper. Okay. And so I wouldn't necessarily say to him, honey, I'm going to a protest today.
Yeah.
I knew that he would run the paper and he would see the protest. And so we'd have to have the conversation afterwards.
Right.
And so we have had lots of conversations about why I do this work and why I show up the way that I do. And my ask of him is that he be understanding. And my other ask is that if there were an incident where maybe I were taken to jail, that he knows me, he knows the soul of me, that I wouldn't be doing anything that's illegal, just be supportive. And we also have a safety plan. And that safety plan is, I'm not going to do anything intentionally to go to jail, right?
Okay.
And so we construct some of those kind of, and I think that those are legitimate conversations that people need to have if they're going to go into this work, so that the people around them feel like they are safe. And so we've had to have those come to Jesus conversations.
Right.
And it's very funny to me because I live the life of that woman that shows up in community. And while it has often been a question of why do Black women show up, for Black men and for everybody else, I've had to have those challenging conversations like, you as a Black man, these things impact you too. Why don't you show up? But I understand. Just like my father, who had to decide, do I just go along to get along so that I can provide for the stability of my family?
Yeah.
Or do I potentially have a gun put to my head and end up dead, like so many other statistics that we know to be true as well?
Yeah. It's literally a life or death choice.
It is.
Yeah. That's why I respect that you said you just don't have that fear thing in you.
Yeah.
I always wonder how people do it, because if you're afraid, you just won't do it right. You'll run, you'll get scared at the first boo, you'll be gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think because I had my first form of protest when I was so young.
Yeah.
It just is something that I never gravitated to. What is fear? Right? If you're 7 and you do something, and let me just add, at the end of that school year, that teacher retired 5 years early because she was like, I don't want to ever experience a little kid like Sonia Williams again. Right?
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, she retired.
Okay.
But so doing it at a young age, I think also helps me not have that fear factor, right? Because I was able to hold out so long and be successful in that thing that now when I look at everything, it's like, what is there to be afraid of?
Yeah. Yeah. Now, do you have any conversion stories? Do you have anyone who's come and asked you, I don't understand this Black Lives Matter thing, or I don't understand equity and diversity. I don't understand what everybody's problem is. I don't understand institutional racism. And you actually talked to them and they were like, okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I had a teacher who ended up, so she was my high school teacher and cheerleading coach. Flip ahead 15, 20 years later, I'm being hired in my last teaching assignment, and she was on the team that I was potentially going to be her boss for. I was the program coordinator.
Mhm.
I was hired. We have this very, as adults, career. She would tell me, call me Mary Liz. And I'd be like, no, Miss Richardson, I just can't do that because my parents taught me respect.
Right.
You'll always be Miss Richardson.
Yes.
And when I left that teaching assignment, she would see me in the news and she would see me on TV and she would call me and she would be like, but Sonia, all lives matter. And I will say, to her, well, when Black lives matter, or when the numbers show differently in the school system, in housing loans, in the medical profession, in law enforcement involved shootings, when we see that, we can say all. And now to this day, she is like, yeah, all lives don't matter. And she's a couple of generations above me.
Mhm.
She's a white woman who she's lived out the American dream. She cares about equity. She cares about the schools that she's taught in, says that she cares about students that don't look like her.
Yeah.
But she couldn't connect the dots when she goes home to her, the comforts of her home, that she can close the door, lock the door, and she cannot think about the things that folks in urban communities have to still care about when they go to their homes.
Exactly. Yeah. It's just a matter of understanding, taking the
Yeah.
time, get out of your box. I always tell people I came to this sort of revelation a couple of years ago when the wave was hitting, that, what I think and what I know is not always right.
Right.
Because even I thought, anyway, I had a lot of thoughts that certain people thought just like I did, and a lot of other things. And I came out of that saying, oh my gosh, there's so many different perspectives, even amongst the peers that look and are just like me.
Yes.
And I made a lot of assumptions about a lot of people that were just completely wrong.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If you are enjoying the F50 Woman podcast, don't forget to share your positive comments and ratings and share us on all your favorite social media channels. F50 Woman is a movement created for women, spread by women. Thank you for your support. Now back to the show and your host, Julia Jack.
Along this journey, did you have someone to help you? I know you talked about your business coach. Talk about your mentors, or talk about your those women that you looked up to.
Yeah. I would first say my mom she was a silent giant in my life. She was one of those women who just showed up, and she had this ability to listen. And I emulate that to a huge degree.
Okay.
I watched the career of a woman here in the Sacramento area who ran for city council. Mm-hmm. And she was just this very quiet, unassuming Black woman. She became the first Black elected person to our city council here. And she was queer, and no one had to know her business for that to be a thing that was a topic of conversation. Okay. And I love the way that she moved in community and said, I'm Black first, right? Because you have to question and ask. You just don't assume that I'm queer just by looking at me, right? But you know that I'm Black when you look at me. You know that I'm a woman when you look at me.
Right.
And so I watched her career and just the way that she moves. Some of the people that I look up to historically, infamously, Fannie Lou Hamer, I'm tired of being sick and tired. So if you're tired of being sick and tired, what you gonna do about it, right?
Yeah.
Is the question.
Yeah.
And so I'm never going to be one of those people that is just tired for the sake of being tired. It's like, okay, we got to wake up tomorrow, and are we going to be tired? I had a teacher when I was in middle school. She was a Black woman. First time I had a Black woman teacher that was very unapologetic about being Black. And this was in the city of Oakland, where I'm from. And she taught advanced algebra. And she was like, oh, I have the most cushy job. I don't have a lot of us in the classroom, but when I see us coming in the classroom, I make sure that us do well. And she said to me, you remind me of my daughters. You are spunky. You are, quick-witted and have a little bit of a smart mouth that can be misconstrued as disrespectful. You are that urban, girl that they talk about. Yeah. Imagine if people just put you in those boxes that they know about little Black girls from Oakland, right? Yeah. And she said, if you do well in my classroom, I know that you have the ability to graduate college and compete with the best of them. I need you to do well in my classroom. And so from that moment on, I was like, there's nothing that I can't do. If I can pass this class, and this woman has really given me the green light, she
Yeah.
and I still talk to this very day.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I have people like that who I've been able to stay connected with and be able to call them up and say, hey, what do you think about this idea? I'm thinking about this. And because they value where I've come from and what I've been able to accomplish, they oblige me. They take the time and they listen to, the crazy ideas that I have. And they say, let me be your cheerleader. Let me give you some resources. Let me give you this phone number. Call this person. Okay. So I've been able to maintain those kind of very real relationships.
Yeah, that's awesome. Can you fit in and stand up at the same time?
Ooh.
I know you talked about your teacher and you talked about some other things, and that just came to mind.
Yeah.
It's such a delicate balance.
That is a hard balance. Mm-hmm. I have been okay. I've come to the conclusion, and I think it started again with 7-year-old Sonia, because I was alienated by that teacher.
Yeah.
That I'm okay with not fitting in.
Okay.
But it's so refreshing to fit in, right? It's so refreshing to be in spaces where you can fit in and stand up at the same time. Yeah. I will tell you that when I arrived on Spelman's campus way back in 1989, which was a long, long time ago, that probably was the first space that I felt comfortable to stand up and fit in at the same time. Like, it is all Black women. Yeah. And so you're automatically going to fit in with someone.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we know us as Black women don't all come from the same cloth, don't all have the same politics, don't all have the same, standards of beauty, all of the things, right?
Right.
And so there were times that I didn't feel like I fit in, but I felt comfortable enough standing out.
Yeah.
So it took me a while. It took me a minute. And so I'm very thankful of 17-year-old Sonia, and I'm very thankful of 18-year-old Sonia to have had that experience. Yeah. Spelman is a very, very special place to me. I say all the time that Oakland is home. That kind of gave me my foundation, but Spelman gave me my wings to fly. Yes. Like, I knew who I was. I knew, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a real thing. I know I went to Howard as well. And I tell you that there was nothing like it.
Right.
Yeah. That exact thing happens.
Yeah.
You feel comfortable to fit in, but now you can stand up and a whole new level of confidence forms. Yeah. Would you say that you found your purpose? Would you say that at the end of your life, that was what I was here to do?
Yeah, most definitely. Okay. Most definitely. It just fits so easily. It is something that I can't deny. I have tried to run from it. I have tried to reshape it, what the it is, and say, oh no, God, I'm gonna go over here and do this. Yeah, no, it has always been something that felt right.
Okay.
And that I was comfortable doing. And so because there's such comfort there, I know it when I see it.
Yeah.
And so I can't run from it whatsoever. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Purpose, fearlessness, all coming together. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And so you're talking about building up your team. Say someone comes to join or to take over who's not fearless like you.
Yeah.
Whether they want to take over, they just want to get engaged. How would you advise a fearful person either to get over the fear or to engage from where they are?
Yeah. We all have to massage that muscle, that courage muscle.
Yeah.
And so while I know that I have been fearless in a lot of aspects of my life, I haven't always been courageous, right? Because those are two different things. Yeah. And so I say that courage takes, you have to take a step back and be comfortable enough to be okay in silence.
Yeah. Okay.
Courage also is a matter of not taking over, not being the star of the show all the time.
Yeah.
Courage is listening. Courage is incorporating other opinions and ideas. And so I would tell an individual who may be afraid of or shameful of where they've come from and don't feel like they're confident in those moments, that to be courageous enough to listen. Be courageous enough to not know all the answers.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know all the answers, but I'm not going to not try.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not going to not be present.
Yeah.
And I think that it's more valuable to be present and silent and not knowing all the answers than not be present at all. And
Yeah.
so that's what I would tell someone who is thinking that this is something that they could try, but they have a little fear factor that's playing around in their mind. And it's mental. It's
Yeah.
not, fear is not like this thing that
Not
really is
real.
going to come
Mhm.
and get you,
Yeah.
right? It's mental.
Yeah. It's all
Yeah.
going on inside of your head. Hasn't even happened yet.
Hasn't
Nothing's
happened yet. Yeah.
Yes. So what is one piece of advice if you were to see your younger self, what would you tell her?
Ooh. Ooh. I do remember that there were times where I was silent and I didn't like people, and I refused to do group work, or I refused to work with other people.
Mm.
And I would tell my younger self to trust other people's experiences, trust their story. That I'm not the only one who's struggling to make sense of this very confusing reality that we find ourselves in. It's hard for a lot of people. And if we can harness people power, had I been able to harness people power younger,
Yeah.
I might have been able to accomplish more things at a younger age. But,
Okay.
when we arrive, we arrive.
Yeah.
And so I would tell my younger self to trust other people's journeys. Like, I don't ever want to invalidate someone else's experience. It is not our place in the world to tell someone, no, you didn't experience that, or it didn't happen that way.
Mm.
Allow people to understand their truth.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, because all they know is what they know, and all they know is what they've been through.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know you talked about growing your business to pass it down so it can live beyond you, but what else is next for you?
Well, I'm glad that you asked that. I am a fresh new author.
Okay.
I'm so excited about the book that we just put out.
Okay.
It's going to print as we speak. And so it will be available on my birthday this year. My birthday is February 13th. A Scribe was started on my birthday in 2009.
Mhm.
Edify Humanity was started on my birthday in 2013. So we thought it appropriate to launch the book on my birthday. And so I'm extremely excited to put something out into the world. To quote my father,
Mhm.
is I'm excited that you're able to share with the world something that's going to make them think. And so my book is called Monsters and Aliens. It is
Okay.
about 7-year-old Sonia's experience
Nice.
of not saying the pledge. But really and truly, in telling that story, the book is about helping us as adults help young people trust their gut and be courageous. I really and truly believe that if we allow young people to help us get out this mess, we'll get out it so much quicker, because we're stuck, right? We have gotten accustomed to conforming and to accepting that this is what it is.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a fresh spirit that comes via young people,
Yes.
and they will be able to help us heal the wounds of this world in a very different way.
Yeah.
And so that's the hope.
Wonderful. So the book is Monsters and Aliens. And
Yeah.
I agree with you about the young people. They just look at us sometimes like, what is wrong with you people? What is going on? This is stupid.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So now is the time that we get a little bit of advice from your playbook. What is one book, other than the new one that's coming out, Monsters and Aliens?
Mhm.
What is one book that you would advise all women to read?
Ooh, yes. Okay, so can I give you two?
Yes.
One is out of print, and I know that it's out of print, so it would be hard pressed for you to find it. And that's the
Mhm.
autobiography of Asada Shakur. Her life story is like amazing.
Okay.
It really, I read it when I probably was like around 21, and I was like, oh my gosh, the things that she went through in life. She's another person like Harriet Tubman and Fannie Lou Hamer that is like, oh my God, she was not fearless. I mean, she didn't have a fear factor in her, a bone in her
a
body.
bone in her
right?
body.
Yeah. And then another one, I read The Bluest Eye when I was 13, and
Okay.
I've read that book like 3 or 4 times. I go back to it because it was like being reminded of whatever that thing about you that you don't trust or don't have a lot of confidence in. It reminds me, okay, Sonia, you might not have liked your thick lips when you were 13, but now at age 50, it's like, I'm
That's
like,
right.
Yes, I am. Everybody else knows
Hello.
these things, right?
Yeah. Put some color on them now so they can show up a little bit
Absolutely.
more. Yeah.
Absolutely. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So The Bluest Eye and the autobiography of Asada Shakur, those
Mhm.
are like my go-to for inspiration.
Okay. And so what is one thing that you can't miss doing every day?
Oh, that's hard. The one thing that I try not to miss doing every day
Mhm.
is taking a nap. I
Okay.
am, I've gotten into, now that I'm 50,
Mhm.
I schedule naps and I am very proud of it.
Yeah.
I had one of my younger sister friends tell me that imagine if Fannie Lou Hamer or Harriet Tubman had the opportunity to rest, not just take a nap, but get a full night's sleep.
Yeah.
Imagine if they had an opportunity to rest.
Hmm.
Like she was trying to tell me, Sonia, slow down,
Mhm.
and we can't accomplish everything in a 24-hour span. So I've been very intentional now about self-care, taking naps, making sure that my mental health is, you know, a top priority. So those things are now like part of my routine. My
Okay.
kids know, like, if you see mommy napping, don't wake her. Like
That's right. Yeah.
she's doing that because she needs it. She
Right.
needs to be able to take care of you. And so let her have that 15. Sometimes it's a 15-minute, cat nap. Don't
Yeah.
interrupt that 15 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So the idea is that if they were able to take a nap, they would have been even more powerful. That's the
Absolutely.
idea. Because the first
And not
thing,
just take a nap, but just get a full
rest,
opportunity to replenish, right?
replenish. Yeah.
They didn't get an opportunity to rest. They had to keep going.
Yeah. I get it. I get it. So I'm going to ask you a question and you can take a minute to think, but what
Okay.
is you're leaving the world. What is the message you have for the world?
Ooh, there's enough. Like
Okay.
we we take for granted
Hmm.
me. We take for granted I need my needs met.
Yeah.
And so the message that I would leave the world, I think what would always resonate in everything that I do,
Mhm.
in talking about equity, in talking about um, being confident in who I am, I think at the core of it is you are enough and we have enough. And to be able to connect the dots between those two things means that collectively we're going to be okay. And
Okay.
so I think about that from a perspective. Always start with Black women in mind, and then I grow it out to the Black community, and
Mhm.
then I grow it out to the Black diaspora. If we can take care of Black women, Black community, and the Black diaspora, the entire world will be taken care of.
Yeah. Okay. So I hear you saying taking care of the Black women, the Black diaspora. We hear you talking about Black people a lot. Now, do you not like Spanish people or white people? Are you excluding them? And I only throw that in there because that's what some people are thinking.
Yeah, yeah. Quite the contrary.
Right.
Quite the contrary. I am very inclusive. I'm
Mhm.
very intentional about the message. I'm very intentional about my approach. And I'm very wanting to learn from other people.
Yeah.
Knowing that at the center of everything I do is not going to just impact young people who look like me.
Okay.
I also want to inspire people who don't look like me.
Nice.
And so I would never, not want to have a conversation. If I saw someone who didn't look like me and they, had a cut and I had a Band-Aid in my wallet, I'm not going to not offer them, the
Yeah.
Band-Aid that's in my wallet.
Right.
Um, that's opposed to what equity is. And so I could never not want to incorporate, leverage the playing field for everyone. The goal is everyone. And
Yeah.
so I'm just saying that the stratus, the perspective from white to Black,
Yeah.
if we look at that which is at the bottom of the totem pole, and if
Mhm.
we can agree that racism has impacted the entire world, then if you help those who are at the bottom of the totem pole, you're lifting everyone. And
Yeah.
so that means every person who is of every nationality and culture and place on this earth.
Yeah. I totally get it, but I just had to ask that question because I
Yeah.
know, when you start talking, people's minds start thinking things.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
that's beautiful. So tell
No,
us,
and I appreciate that question too.
yeah, good, good, good. So tell us now, after this podcast is over, how can everyone get in touch with you, find you, and get involved in your work
Absolutely.
and buy your book?
Yeah. So all of those things can be found on our website, which is
Okay.
Ascribe Success, and that's ASCRIBE
Mhm.
success.com. We are on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter as Ascribe Success. I tell people, we have Ascribe, which is our for-profit or business, but our nonprofit work with Edify Humanity, we are really talking about how are we creating educational opportunities for folks around the globe, because we do a virtual online camp to teach those things that are not taught in the traditional history and social studies classroom. Um,
Really?
which
Okay.
oftentimes are, the Black and Indigenous and the Latinx experience, the LGBTQ experience. What are those things that are not traditionally taught in the classroom?
Right. Okay.
And we elevate those things. And so people ask me, well, how can I donate to your work? I'm like, last summer in particular, we did it to our teaching. The focus was two things: literacy and economic empowerment. And so all of our kids learned how to start a business. All of our kids learned how to invest in the stock market, and all of our kids learned how to start a home garden. Because I really and truly believe if you can do one of those things, you don't have to rely on other folks to give you a handout and expect that you have to go to a 9 to 5 to sustain your life. And so at the end of our program, we gifted every last one of our scholars with $100 gift card to either start a business, invest in the stock market, or start their home garden. And it was just a beautiful, thing. I'm getting stories back now as we prepare for our next summer teach-in.
Yeah.
And so that's just, one of the things that we do on a more
And,
local level.
and what ages are those before you move on to the next one?
Oh my goodness, 5 to 18.
Okay.
And you would be surprised the questions that a 5-year-old asks, and you'd be surprised how quickly they can catch on to these concepts that we think
Yeah.
are above their heads. They
Yeah.
are smart as all get out. They are
Yeah.
ready.
Yes.
They are so ready.
Yes.
Secondarily, with the nonprofit, we are an outreach for community. And so when a person is experiencing, most of the time we get calls from families where their kid is being suspended for something that they feel like is inequitable. We get calls from individuals that may have experienced state sanctioned violence from the hands of the police. Sometimes we get calls from individuals who are experiencing unhousedness, and they feel like they can't get an apartment, or they don't have enough ends to meet their needs.
Yeah.
And so we are community advocates. And so that's the work. That's the work. But it's
Yeah.
all intertwined to equity. And my exit strategy of leaving Ascribe one day is so that I have more free time to really elevate, edify, and make sure that it's sustainable and that it leaves a lasting impact as well.
Yeah. Then it can spread. Yes.
Yeah.
And when it comes to those practical things that people come to you for, how do you solve those problems? If I can't find housing or I can't afford it, how do you even start? What do you do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Being, like I said, a former chapter member with Black Lives Matter, we looked at what are the resources in our local area.
In the
And I
community.
would venture to say that these are the same infrastructures in every major city around this country, right?
Most likely. Yeah.
And so that's just the way our government and municipalities and things are set up. And so I don't say that I can solve this problem,
Right.
but I'm going to help you, walk through with you, be a shoulder to cry on, or just a sounding board to listen to whatever those issues are. We don't necessarily ascribe to, we are here to save the day and we are going to get this for you and that for you. People are just thankful that, one, someone is there to listen.
Yeah.
Two, that scary thing that they need to face, maybe they had an experience with law enforcement and they felt like they were treated as some kind of way.
Mm-hmm.
And so having someone who knows the system sit there and go to court with them, that's support, right?
Yeah.
So we do things like court support and jail support, and go to hearings, educational hearings with parents, or IEP meetings with parents with their children, because sometimes they just don't have the language to even be able to matriculate through those systems. And they just need someone there to be support. And so it's not necessarily a matter of we're going to come to this solution and we can promise you this end. It's a matter of you are going to feel like you are supported through the process. And if we don't ever find out the answer or the solution that we're looking for, at least you will feel like you didn't go it alone. And that's what I think people are missing in the society that we live in. We've been so conditioned to be alienated from one another and think that we have to go it alone, that we forget the resources that are right around us.
Yes, and the community. Isn't that true from when we start? Just the support.
Absolutely.
And like you're talking about the 5-year-olds who get it. We're not born stupid. We really are looking for support. And yes, you can. And here's the resources and here's the information. So I agree. I can see that as being an answer. So thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for being with us. I'm excited for everybody to hear this. And I pray that it changes hearts everywhere that it's heard. I just pray for people to open their minds. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Julia. I always say if one person, has an epiphany, then we've done what we needed to do. Yeah. If multiple people have epiphanies, then we can go forward together.
Yeah. Well, keep on doing what you're doing. Not that I can't say that I'm fearless yet, but I am purposeful. So when I face the fear, I just say, listen, whatever.
Yeah.
I just kind of push it to the side. Yeah. So thank you.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the F50 Woman Podcast. Join the F50 Woman movement and this diverse group of voices to help change the world one woman at a time. Why should you join at your age? Because we're not done yet.